Okay. Hi, everyone. So how many, we have 43 participants already, Patty. Okay. Shall I start? Okay. Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see you all on what would have been the fourth ArteFino Fair weekend. I know we've all experienced so many changes over the past 5 months, and we at ArteFino have not been spared. We found ourselves with a heavy heart having to cancel the fair and to quickly adapt and pivot to e-commerce, which we have to admit has been a big adjustment for us. Our team has been very busy with the Ilaw at Pag-asa fundraiser on shopartefino.com, as we also wanted to give back to the greater community and help out the COVID efforts of our hospitals. To date, I am proud to report that we have donated 7 UV sterilizers to the PGH, and there will be more to be donated come September. We are currently all hands on deck in the process of improving the website, making it more user-friendly, adding various applications, preparing to open our doors to the international market, which is exciting, who have been following us closely through the years, but would always get frustrated because we didn't offer international shipping. And basically just making sure that the site's content communicates the stories of all of you, our brand partners, your products, and your communities. Today, we bring you a workshop on branding and photography. These are topics which we've lined up for the ArteFino Stories series. And finally, we're so excited to be able to bring these to you today. I suppose the timing for this could not have come at a better time. We are all home, constrained by logistics and this virus, having to do a lot of things on our own for our own brands. Case in point, the shirt I'm wearing today, which is the Bagobo Tagabawa shirt, we sell this on our site, and these are stored in my house. So when I get an order from Angeline, she emails me. I have to look for the color, the size. I have to pack it, write a note, a thank you note, and book either Lala Move or Grab, which, as you all know, can be very tedious and it could take time. So, and sometimes I even have to photograph the shirts myself. So in my mind, when I'm doing all this, I'm thinking, sariling sikap talaga ito, which I'm sure you're all experiencing these days. The goal of today's session is to share a short overview on branding and photography, expertise we have gathered over the past years in pinning down our own ArteFino branding and positioning. We want to impart this to you in the hopes of coming out with something beneficial for each of you and something you can apply to your own brands. Today, we have not one, but 2 Isas, Isa Cruz and Isa Sarmiento. So the first part of our talk today, which is on branding, it will take about an hour from 1:30 to 2:30, will be tackled by Isa Cruz, whom you all know as well, and we work very closely with her on all the ArteFino marketing and communications related matters. If you're not aware, Isa is the founder of SSOWELL, SSOWELL, a branding and communications company that specializes in building brands that embraces the synergy between branding and marketing. SSOWELL assists brands to push for meaningful, responsible, and relevant work, providing a creative platform to execute great ideas and have a good story that inspires the brand's customers to do things that are bigger than themselves. She has been an integral part of the ArteFino team since day one. The second part, which is on photography, will take half an hour from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. Isa Sarmiento, she's new on our team. We've recruited her all the way from Vancouver, is a founder and creator of This Is It Studios. It's a creative studio company based in Vancouver, Canada, that specializes in wedding photography, lifestyle portraits, branding photography, as well as corporate events and family occasions that capture moments with an authentic, candid, and documentary approach. Isa Sarmiento is a photographer willing to go to great lengths to catch instances, whether it be in adventure situations or regular everyday life. A photographer that allows her clients to be themselves and feel comfortable in their own skin in order for them to enjoy the experience and leave them remaining confident in trusting her process. We at ArteFino have learned so much over the years from each of the brands we have worked and collaborated with each of you. We may not have the fair this year, but we forge on, making our presence felt, promoting our brand partners, supporting the communities they work with, and making sure that our artisanal creations and traditions are present in households all over the world for generations to come. This workshop today is our way of giving back to a community that has inspired us. And we recognize that now, more than ever, is a time to come together as one community, one heart work. So, we have a few reminders before we start. Patty?
It's on the screen already.
Can't see it.
Yeah, switch to screen share.
Anyway, I will just say it out loud because I have it in my notes. For any questions that you would like to ask, please type it in the chat box. It's easier that way, and we will take note of all your questions and get back to you, or maybe Isa can get back to you after this talk. Also, we will have to put everybody on mute so as not to disrupt the flow of the talk. And lastly, for the brands participating in the Reimagined website, you know who you are. Please stay on. So after this is over, after the photography talk, the Reimagined group we will have a short briefing for you from 3 o'clock to 3:30. So without further ado, I turn you over to Isa Cruz.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. So hello everyone. Good afternoon and nice to see you here. Thanks, Mel, for the introduction. Oh my gosh, pressure to to deliver something so formally. Like before I begin my part of the talk, I would like to first and foremost thank you for making time this afternoon to attend this session. I know everyone's busy. And we want to be able to deliver something that is useful to you. So just wanted to say that this is something that we've always wanted to do. The second part, as Mel mentioned, will be delivered by Isa Sarmiento. She's a Vancouver-based photographer. She's one of my closest friends, and this is something that we've always talked about doing because we wanted to help out like small to medium enterprises, because we know at this point in time that there are so many things that like people have always reached out to us for in terms of how we can help them. But of course, obviously, like we can't help everyone. So basically, the objective of this talk is to be able to deliver certain insights from our end, like what we know. We talk about personal experiences, and we want to be able to share them with you. So after this talk, we will, just so you know, there's so much information that we will talk about, but we want to be able to share with you a simple worksheet towards the end of this session that you can actually apply, and you can email this to us and we will give you feedback. We want to be able to give you that opportunity to actually apply everything that we will discuss here. Please don't get overwhelmed with everything that we will discuss. And I would like to apologize in advance. This is something that I'm not used to. I might get lost in my presentation. I'm totally nervous please trust that this is something that I know. Like, this is something that we've been doing for the past how many years now. I'm not a public speaker, and this is totally out of our comfort zone. So there. So okay, so just a few reminders. Next slide, please. Okay. So basically, everything that we will talk about here is based on personal experience. We are going to talk about what we know, but everything may not be something that you can relate with. So just take what you need and stay open. Next slide, please. So on my end, I'm gonna talk about branding and why this is important now more than ever. No. So we've observed so many things happening lately. Like, the shift to digital is so important. Online as a primary touch point is something that people are starting to get used to. People are craving for connection and new experiences, and they look to digital platforms to get that. We've seen this before. There's a rise in mindful buyers. People are willing to support brands and products for as long as they know who they are, where they come from, and more importantly, what they stand for. This is true before, and this is very, very, very true now. So what's important now is that the new consumer values transparency. People are looking into the integrity of the brand. They know who they are supporting. So one of the things that, like, I want to dive into more than anything is why branding is so important. Everyone is trying to pivot. Almost everybody I know is trying to think of how to stay relevant. No, there's so many concepts and ideas being introduced left and right, and basically everybody is getting overwhelmed. Like, like, just trying to think of how we were trying to strategize how we wanted to position ArteFino. Before the lockdown, we had to we did like a strat plan prior to this, and all of these plans are, well, I'm not saying that it's basically down the drain, but basically a lot of things started to pivot. So this panic caused us maybe trauma in pushing us to certain directions that may or may not be relevant to our brand. So we've observed so many shifts in approach and behavior, which is why we think that this is so important to focus on branding. Next slide, please. So everyone's trying to come up with something new. Everyone's trying to stay relevant. There are so many opportunities that have started to emerge, especially on the retail landscape. We see so many concepts popping up left and right. Everyone is trying to address a need, and everyone is trying to capture an opportunity. It's so hard to tell which brands are actually authentic or not. Like, we see this online every single day. It's so easy to project an image online. We know for a fact that everything is filtered online. We can create a brand image, but the key ingredient is really to walk the talk. No, so basically the opportunity is that it's a fair game for most, given that we have one playing field, but one important question remains: how do we use our brand's voice to get through the online noise? Through the online noise? The answer is very, very, very simple. So this is all about branding. Next slide, please. So branding plays a vital role in all communications platforms, from traditional to digital. So everything that we do, everything that we anchor on is all about branding. So we have to treat our brands as a person. Like, whatever we do, however we deliver our brands, from online to digital, from traditional to offline to online to offline, is something that we always have to consider as something that is seamless. I think this is the time that we shift our perspective and approach. It's actually an advantage for most of the brands here, no? So as you may have noticed, there are so many new brands that are coming out. Like, you just go through Instagram, you go through I don't know, whatever platform, whether it's Grab, Food Panda, and all of these things. There are so many new brands that are out there because everybody is trying to address a need. There's so much opportunity there. Everybody is trying to shift. But there is an advantage for, I believe, most of the brands, a lot of the brands that have been with ArteFino. These brands have been there for quite some time now, and it's an advantage for most of us. Instead of trying to reinvent our communications, it's an advantage for us to just really go back to our core. This is the time now. We forget that we should go back to basics, and it's about time to go dig deeper. So my part of the talk is all about that. Sorry, it's kind of weird that I'm talking to myself. We go back to that. We go back to basics. This is really about time to go back to really dig deeper. So we have been working with clients who've been maybe like from small to medium enterprises and to even like bigger corporations, and we've always talked about really rooting and really staying true to the brand, and this is what we wanted to share with you today. So next slide, please. So first part is the branding philosophy. So this is basically what we believe in. I just wanted to share with you how we approach things, no? So branding is really more of like character building. It may be similar to building a relationship. This is the foundation for everything. Everything that you will have to do moving forward will root to how you wish to present your brand. So what do we all want? We all want to invest in something that lasts forever. Next slide, please. So branding is not just about a logo. It's the foundation for everything. So this is how we represent ourselves, no? So next slide, please. So as I've said earlier, we all want to invest in something that lasts forever. As a business owner myself, I totally understand that time is so important, and everything we spend time on is of value. We don't want to spend time on anything that we basically do not believe in. This is why it's important that we realize that we do invest in time on something. We make sure it's of value, and we better do it right. So we have to go back to basics, and the time is actually now. So how do we do it? Next slide, please. So 3 things that I feel we've always anchored on when it comes to brand building. So number 1, we have to build interest. First and foremost, this is something that like we have to be able to make sure we anchor on. If they're not interested in the brand, they will not be able to basically like follow us. No? So interest and awareness and first and foremost. And then after that, we have to be able to build trust, and we have to be able to build brand love. So this is a formula that we've always anchored on time and again. Like we've always believed that when we present something, it has to be of interest and of value for them to take notice. And then trust is basically how you deliver the message, and love is going beyond your product. Next slide, please. So again, just like any relationship, it's an investment. So first, I talked about relationships. It all starts with spark. So interest and awareness is very, very important. It starts with your brand, your offering, and your story. So why would people be interested in you? You have to establish that reason to believe. And in order to do that, you have to establish your overall branding. So it's in every single thing that you do. I talked about branding as an integral part of building your character. So for you to be able to communicate your message, you have to be able to incorporate like branding in every single thing that you do. So consistency in everything, whether it's online or on ground, you have to be able to make sure that that is very, very clear to you. Another thing to think about is to build partnerships and collaborations with brand ambassadors and media. So again, going back to that, like interest and awareness is your entry point. Like, of course, if you start a business, you have to make sure that this is something that people are interested in for them to stick with you. Followed by, next slide, please, brand trust. So brand trust is rooted on respect. Trust and respect is the foundation of everything. So basically, this is something that like maybe not a lot of people really value, but like if you really wanna root back to your brand, trust and respect is really the foundation of everything. If you know who you are and you know what you stand for, it is so easy for you to decide what to do, and it will be easy for people to believe you. Like personal philosophy, like it is so easy for people to just, well, basically for us, like authenticity is something that cannot be faked. Like transparency is key. Like this is something that we have seen the past how many months. Like people are looking for authentic brands, and they really value like brands that they know they can trust. No, so communication, that we are a conscious and mindful brand, is something that like we value at ArteFino. Next slide, please. And then followed by brand love. So one of the things that like we can anchor on is how do we build that sense of interdependency. So when you talk about interdependency, this is really more of like basically the idea that it's not all about you. Like we have to understand that we all need each other, and then we build from there. So when it comes to communications, we have to think beyond the brand. We have to prioritize customer engagement to be able to establish connection. And then we can launch campaigns that are exciting, unique, and worth talking about, and expand product offering that is shareable and personalized. When you talk about brand love, so this is basically thinking of others first. Like we don't have to talk about hard selling our product, but basically how this can actually help you in general and how we need you. So part of this, we've seen at ArteFino, like we're all about community building, and I believe that like to be able to build brand love, we have to be able to understand that we all need each other. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we value when it comes to brand building is to be able to establish identity. So it all starts with knowing who you are and what you stand for. So in the next slides that we are gonna show you, we're gonna share some formats that we have used when it comes to brand building, which you can apply later on. Again, as I've mentioned earlier, this is something that we will share with you post workshop, which you can answer, and then we can help you identify by giving feedback. Please don't get overwhelmed. It's a lot of information, I know. But we believe that it's really getting into the detail that can really help you give perspective to your brand. Because bottom line is, as you can see on the screen, brands with soul and meaning are the ones that truly last. So as I've talked about earlier, like we really have to anchor on the brand message, and we really have to get to the soul of the brand to be able to make sure that this is something that truly lasts forever. Okay. Next slide, please. So, having said that, one of the exercises that we usually do when it comes to working with some brands is creating the brand prism. So, when we create the brand prism, this is basically identifying who you are and what you stand for. So, what a brand prism looks like, next slide, please, is something like this. So, we will share this with you. Don't worry about this. You don't have to take notes. We'll send you a format, but this is something that has helped us time and again, like in terms of how we formulate a brand, no? So you have here the brand prism overview. So this is basically everything that you believe in, what you stand for, how you wish to represent, and everything about your brand, basically. So again, the time is now. The time for us to be able to really anchor on the brand is actually now. We have to understand what we're all about to be able to deliver that consistent message. We don't have to go so far beyond this. So I'm gonna talk about just the factors. So you have here the physique, there's relationship, there's reflection, there is personality, there's culture and self-image. So when you talk about physique, this is the visual details and representation of your target audience. So, you know, you have to understand that, like, if you're talking about a brand, okay, how are you going to sell your product? This could be retail, this could be online, this could be whatever. This is your brand image. So this is how you describe things. So you can put here certain adjectives like, okay, I want the brand to be simple and sophisticated and clean. And I want it to have a white background. I want it to use natural elements. So how you wish for others to see the brand, if you see on the left side, this is externalization. On the right hand side, this is internalization. So for everyone here, I think this is something that you can actually work with. I believe this is just really the framework of everything. This is what your brand really represents, no? So how others see your brand, that's your physique. So let's say if your brand is really more, okay, talk about white space. White space, you're a brand that has like a lot of this clear white space. You can define it in the physique. But in the personality side, aligned with the physique is really more of talking about how do you really represent your brand? Is this a clean brand? Is this a brand that represents something that's maybe organic, or maybe how do you describe that actual person? Is this fun? Is this someone that's inspirational? Is this someone that is friendly? So those are things that you have to define, no? When it comes to relationship, this is how you wish to represent your brand to your client. So for example, when it comes to relationship, I want to be a brand that can serve our clients. People can actually depend on us. That is part of a relationship that you have with your clients. In terms of culture, this can be interdependency, like understanding that we all need each other. And then on the reflection side, so sender's perception of its clients, the typical user of the brand, and self-image, client's own idea of self because they use the brand. So in the next slide, I'll show you certain examples. But in my homework that we will give you later on, this is something that you can actually work on. Okay, next slide, please. So this is an example of a brand, no? So I was talking about like properties. On the physique side, you can talk about natural materials, like you can go as detailed as you can. Actually, like when you define this, it's better that you're as detailed as possible. So you can talk about hand-woven, handmade material. If you're talking about communications, you can dive deep into situations like beach, mountain, city, whatever, bright elements, sunlight, natural greens, leaves. You can be as descriptive as possible. The idea is to list everything down. On the personality side, like you have casual and sophisticated, confident, strong sense of character. So again, you're trying to define a particular person. As I've mentioned earlier, like branding is all about relationships. It's all about character building. So whenever you talk about a brand, you have to root back to who you are and what you really, really stand for. And I think the time is now. Again, this is an advantage for everybody here in the room, no? Like there's so many brands out there who are trying to create something new, but here we are, we have the experience. But instead of like going different directions, let's root back to where to really, really what we stand for. So here you have relationships. One of the important things that like we talk about is being professional. I think that's important for most, like especially if you want to position your brand as a global brand. Being professional is something that's not bad, actually. You can still be human-centered, but still be professional. You can be friendly and warm and accommodating. efficient and reliable. So it really depends on you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really how you wish to create this brand, no? In terms of culture, one of the things that like we talk about in ArteFino is prioritizing Filipino sustainability at the forefront, prioritizing purpose, people, and planet. We may not be a quote-unquote sustainable brand, but we try to be a responsible brand. So human-centered and community-centered brand is, I believe like this is something that like most of us here really anchor on. Proudly Filipino, locally sourced, locally made is something that's part of our culture. Innovative growth, abundant mindset. So again, like these are just samples. Like you can actually try to define this the way you want it to. My suggestion is try to itemize everything. Like don't limit it to just because this is something that you feel like your brand represents. Like put everything there and then filter. So whenever we talk to brands, like what we recommend is list everything, like just put everything there, and then from there you organize like what's so important to you that you really cannot negotiate, and then that's what you leave behind. So your brand prism basically remains super clear, that even when you actually talk about 3 adjectives there, the priority is so clear to you, and everything that you do revolves around your brand prism. So again, I would like to state the importance of this brand prism because everything revolves around the value principle that you wish to identify. Okay, next slide, please. So the next principle that I would like to talk about is the brand pyramid. So this formula, okay, again, don't get overwhelmed, but this formula is something that we've used time and again when it comes to building your reason to believe and you're building your brand essence. So anything that we have to do, whether it's campaign building, whether it's brand building, always revolves around this. It talks about your consumer insight. What will your audience think? What's the insight? What will your consumer think? What can you promise and what is your truth? And then with that triangle comes your essence. So this is your message. So again, these are examples that you may want to use when you start building your campaigns moving forward. Lalo na when it comes to social media. There's so many things that you want to talk about. But important is really to anchor on a solid message. And it really boils down to what your brand essence is all about, no? So next slide, please. So just to dive deeper into the brand pyramid, so this is what it basically means. Your brand essence is the core value and purpose of your brand. What do you really stand for? So anything that's in the triangle, you see this triangle, has to represent your brand promise, your consumer insight, and your product truth. So I mentioned earlier, this is something that applies to even down to when you think of your campaigns moving forward. It doesn't really necessarily mean that this is something that you talk about when you say, okay, I'm building a brand. This is your brand essence. Your consumer insight is basically your audience. What are they looking for? How do you basically tap them? How do you basically connect with them? This is an insight about your target market that is relevant to your product. You can either support, answer, or challenge their observation. In terms of promise, when I say promise, this is bigger than your truth. Product truth is about what your product is, what you can promise, the product benefit. So this is what differentiates you from other brands. But the promise is something, I guess this is how you add value to your brand. Your brand's mission, what your customers can expect from you. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to share with you an example of a brand that we have worked with. We work with Wholesome Table when it comes to brand building. No? So their brand essence is eat consciously, live consciously. So in terms of consumer insight, when we launched this brand, people were looking for a way to live healthier lifestyle, but they find they do not have the time and energy to pursue it. So basically, we found an insight. The product truth is that we wanted to come up with a restaurant that serves organic and comfort food. And the brand promise is that this is really a wholesome lifestyle, beginning with every plate that they serve in the restaurant. So again, you see the contrast there. The product truth is actually the product, like what you actually serve, but the promise is basically bigger than that. It all boils down to brand essence. Like, we want to be able to promise you that if you value the brand, you eat consciously and you live consciously. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, just wanted to share with you one of their promises. In their manifesto, if you've been to Wholesome Table, this is actually in their placemats. They've always promised that they believe in going back to basics. They wanted to anchor on building a healthy food culture. So basically, in everything that they do, it all revolves in the triangle, right? Like, they value that people are actually very, very mindful and that they want to go back to basics. So in terms of product truth, they offer something that is valuable to them. In terms of promise, they want to build a healthy brand culture. Next slide, please. Okay, so always with love and good intentions. Sorry, just to add to that, like, when we talk about branding, it translates to everything, like everything that you do, from packaging to product to communication to everything. Okay, so going to my next topic, one of the most important things, aside from knowing who you are, is understanding your audience. So you know already who you are, but if you don't understand your audience, then it will be very, very difficult to connect. Next slide, please. Okay, so one quotes from like someone we look up to. The quality of thinking is directly related to the quality of people that we talk to. So everything really revolves around who you basically talk to. And part of this, one exercise that you can actually do when it comes to brand building is knowing who your audience is. Next slide, please. So here, every time we come up with a brand, we try to come up with a consumer pen portrait. We try to identify our target audience and consumer and really identify their behavior for us to be able to talk to them, no? So we're such visual people that like everything has to do with imaging. So we try to imagine everything. Like, it's so hard to connect with people if you don't know who you're speaking to. It cannot just be, okay, I have a brand and I have a promise, and I know my brand is something that really can deliver in terms of product. But if you don't know who you're speaking to, it really doesn't matter because you won't be able to connect. So I just wanted to reiterate the importance of identifying your target audience and consumer. So one of the key success factors in really developing that communication connection is really defining who your target audience is. So this is how we typically do it. It's really up to you how you want to do it, but we want to put a visual to it. So we try to look for pegs and we try to look for images of how we want to be able to really like build on to who we're speaking to. And then we try to define their behavior. So this is just an example. So one of the brands that we're working with, this is how we kind of like try to put them together. So for example, you can define their lifestyle, someone who values overall well-being, someone who is trendy and up to date. But of course you have to define like how old they are, I guess like also income bracket is important, what they stand for, and then also their behavior is super duper important, and their belief system. So these are just examples. This is basically how we do it in order for us to craft the message to be able to connect with them, no? So if this is something that like is in perspective to us, it's so easy for us to be able to define how we're able to create content that will connect with them. So if you're creative and experimental, of course, you're not gonna create something that's not creative and experimental. And you're gonna present it to them. This is not something that will connect with them, no? Next slide, please. So here is another slide example. values quality time, conscious consumer, conscious lifestyle, focused on no sir priorities, values me time. So again, these are just examples of how we do things. This is maybe like going deep into the brand. Like this is maybe something that you can do to really identify like what your customer stands for and what they really value in order to deliver that message. Because like what we're seeing now, like everyone's trying to get creative, but the problem lies in how do you connect. If you're not able to really define who you're speaking to, there's no way to connect. So the most important thing is to really zero in who you're speaking to in order to deliver that message. You don't have to speak to everyone. You can actually calendar everything. For example, you prioritize, this is your target market. You talk to this group of people now, and the next thing you know, dive into the next topic, dive into the next communication plan, zero in on a particular consumer pen portrait, and then talk to that specific. I think personally speaking, that's more effective. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so visual translation, your brand, your story. Next slide, please. So, we believe this to be true. Details matter, and we have to define and refine everything. So it's all about editing. So this is something that we believe is a skill that we basically anchor on. So it's all about discipline. Everything that you do is a direct reflection of your brand and your business. So first things first, we have to visualize and we organize. So maybe it's through a mood board, whatever. We visualize how we want our brand to be represented. And every single detail has to be itemized. And then you build on a story. So I'll talk about this in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's where you can start. You can start with a mood board. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, like you think of your brand overall, no? So one of the things that I really like doing is putting together a mood board. Like whenever somebody approaches us like, okay, we're creating a brand from zero. What do you want to do? You create a mood board. You look into color, you look into brands, you look into photography, how you're able to represent a brand based on, I guess, the principles that we talked about earlier. You put them into visual translation, and then you create a mood board. So there's no right and wrong answer to this. Basically, this, like, I think personally speaking, what feels right, it always boils down to a mood board. There's no right or wrong answer. Like you don't even have to follow a prism or anything. But if it feels right to you, then that's your mood board. Like that's what you go with. And you put it together and then you translate. Next slide, please. Okay, so just wanted to like reiterate some samples on what like you want to be able to like really anchor on when it comes to like building a brand. Like especially for those new brands, no, or maybe those brands who are starting to really think of how to position their brands, is really how to come up with a brand that supports your DNA. So we talk about the prism. So everything that you define in the prism has to represent your DNA. If you talk about something that's timeless and sophisticated, it has to represent in everything that you choose, like whether it's colors, whether it's fonts, whether it's imaging, whatever. It has to represent everything that you have talked about. Next slide, please. And then comes your color. Color discipline is very important. So I think this is something that like, again, take whatever you need. You can apply this. This may be something that will work with you or may not work for you. But on our end, like we feel that the base colors will always have to be neutral, just because like we have so much landscape that we can work with. You have the physical and the digital landscape, which have like different sensitivities. So we usually like go with a base color, which is the neutrals, and then we define the discipline. And then if we want to inject color there, then obviously that's okay. But when it comes to like branding, we always try to work with something that can be applicable to all platforms. But it's important to define the discipline so that this is something that you can work with when you translate to digital or to print. Next slide, please. So another thing that is so important to us is defining your lifestyle. So especially when it comes to communication. So we talk about personality and we talk about physique, no? So one of the things that like it's important for communication is how will this be relatable to everyday life? So later on, I will introduce Janice of Island Girl, who will talk about her brand. This was something that like we came up with for her brand. It's really defining like what the brand Island Girl really stands for in terms of lifestyle, no? So pre-pandemic, like this is something that like we really came up with, and how we wish to deliver the brand is really how we translate it into the digital space, or maybe even like on ground, like how we wish to represent who the Island Girl is. So we define the lifestyle. So this is really very important because it goes beyond the product. So we talk about product so much. We talk about presenting the product, like what the product really is in terms of value, in terms of material, in terms of components, whatever. But how it's gonna be used is something so important to the client, to your consumer, to your audience, because this is how they will be able to relate with you. If they cannot relate with you, they will not purchase your product. Next slide, please. So here we talk about setting. So again, this is very important part of branding, no? So retail experience is something that's so critical. When you talk about retail experience, it's not about the physical space now. Like it's like, especially now that the shift of to digital is so well. This is very something that like everybody is experiencing. You know, how do you present that digitally? So however you present your product is your retail experiences. So these are the things that like you may want to define. So going back to the mood board, all of these elements, whatever you value and whatever you try to build has to be ultra consistent in order for them to really anchor on the brand. Now, when they look at the brand, they know, oh, okay, that's that brand, without even having to put that logo somewhere there. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you some examples on how you wish to present your product. So we're seeing a lot of brands out there that have like multiple like online stores and like digital platforms. And I guess this is something that we wanted to share because moving forward with the ArteFino platform, like this is something that like we really wanted to anchor on. And when it comes to product presentation, we want to be as direct as possible. So, and this can apply to how you wish to deliver your product on your website platforms also. You don't want to add so much clutter to your brand, so you want to focus on like your product. So, but you like, I understand that like it's so hard to come up with like professionally looking photos. So these are things that like we basically can work with in the next part of the program. Like Isa Sarmiento is going to talk about how you're going to be able to do this. But basically, like, how do you come up with something that's as natural as possible? But focusing on your product, like how you're able to really anchor on the details and in terms of like product presentation. Next slide, please. And then, okay, so we talk about branding, no? So again, branding is everything. So it's how you experience the product. So one of the important things that like we really have to anchor on is packaging. Like I understand that there are so many people here always trying to ask, okay, how do we connect? How do we deliver our message? It could actually be through packaging. Anything that you believe in, you can anchor onto this. It could be as simple as doing something DIY. Like I know Zara is here, she's gonna talk later. And I think this is something that she's been really good at, like really writing really key messages and really connecting with the customers. Branding is again a relationship. It's relationship building. So you really have to invest in time into delivering that experience, which is something that like we really believe that is important. Next slide, please. Here, just an example on how to deliver your approach in messaging through keywords and visual cues. So you don't have to talk about your brand all the time. You can talk about other things through illustrations, through quotes, through other messaging that you can put in your whatever, in your messaging, in your packaging, in your digital feeds, in anything. But the overall goal is when they look at the brand, even without your logo there, they understand that it's coming from you. So overall, everything, all these principles are just really the details that we really believe that we can actually anchor on. Anything you can take, anything you can leave behind. But bottom line is, when you talk about branding, it's really all about the detail. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you want to take it a little further, like I know there are some professional brands here who really create like product editorials, and really very professional looking ones. This is basically how you can inspire other people to use your product, from ways to use and ways to wear. So this is how you translate everything that you have talked about in principle. So again, you go back to the prism, and then whenever you create campaigns, you go back to this. Is it really describing my physique? Is it describing my personality? Is it describing the culture that I want to create? If everything is a check, then it's a yes. Next slide, please. Okay, the online experience. So again, one of the things that like we really wanted to focus on is the online experience. So I know it's a little bit overwhelming, like in terms of like what we really want to focus on. But for most brands here, like it is so important that we choose a primary touch point based on what's available to you. Like there's like, sometimes it's so overwhelming because like there's so many ideas out there. People are injecting philosophies and approaches and stuff like that. But again, it's really how you see things. Like I think it's an opportunity there because there's so many free stuff that you can do online, and there's so many things that you can have access to that people have no access to before, such as creating websites. You have Shopify, which is such a DIY platform for anybody. Actually, like I know I have this group with I know you guys are here, Mike, hello, and Zara and the Business Survivors group. Like we've been talking about this, no, and you can actually create a website platform. There's no excuse. All you have to do is be patient and really learn and really adapt to this shift, because this is where we're at now. If we don't adapt to the shift, then we're gonna be left behind. So I'm going to talk about like all of these platforms that we can actually explore, and maybe in terms of like key perspectives that we really anchor on. Like these are the things that like we have started with in terms of framework. So next slide, please. So website. This is the mother of all digital platforms. This is a place to share the overall experience of the brand. So again, we believe that this is really your business address. So many available platforms out there like WordPress or Shopify, where you can DIY everything. All you need is to be open to learn and to shift. I know Mel here is fond of Shopify. Like we're building a website, anchoring on a Shopify platform. It's so amazing actually. So all you have to do is subscribe, and there's really no excuse for you not to have a website. So it's all about patience and really adapting to the shift, no? So, okay, so we're not gonna teach you how to create a website, but more or less how to strategize when it comes to building that online experience. Next slide, please. So here, I'm gonna talk about like how to deliver the brand experience. So first, you have your shopping experience. Second, you have your design experience. And third, you have your customer service. So these three things are so important to us, because definitely we have to be able to formulate how we're going to develop the online experience through these three factors. I'll talk about them later in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So when you talk about shopping experience, this is the framework for everything. So when somebody approaches you, this is your customer journey. So let's say if you're trying to come up with a website, no? So given that you decide on a Shopify platform, this is the first thing that you have to think about. How are they gonna experience your brand? Like, okay, when they go to the site, what are they gonna see? Organization is key. Sitemap is everything. So you have to be able to provide that seamless shopping experience from browsing to fulfillment through your shopping experience. So one of the things that, like, personally as a branding consultant, like, we really believe that, like, experience is really everything. We cannot leave anything behind. So it's how they experience your product from the way they see it online, and how you actually receive your product is something that you have to think about, especially when you talk about branding. It's about the customer journey. So one of the first things that you have to think about is the shopping experience. So maybe if you're thinking about, like, creating your online platform, is how you wish to deliver your product. This is your base. Shopping experience. Define how you wish your brand to be experienced through your website platform. Next slide, please. And then here we talk about the design experience. So this is about the branding and the imagery and the visual presentation, which I'm going to talk about earlier. Just a few key insights that we may want to take when it comes to presenting your product. And again, communications is everything, and offer value-adding experiences. Basically, I think, like, one of the things that, like, we've always talked about is your website. One of the things that, like, we have to think of is understanding your platform. Like, when people go to their website, all you want them to do is actually add cart and purchase. Your social media platform is something, is really a platform for them to communicate your brand, to promote your brand and everything. But then when they go to the website, all you want them to do is to add to cart and purchase the product. So in terms of developing that whole design experience, you don't want to add so much clutter and really parang directing them to so many things in the website when you've actually marketed your product already. So I think one of the things that, like, is really, really key is understanding your platform and how it really works. So your social media is there to drive the sales, meaning you talk about your brand, you talk about your product, you talk about your story, everything is there. When they go to the website, what do you want them to do? Understanding what you want them to do is key. So everybody wants to add to cart. So we have to go back to that. By the time they reach the platform, all you want them to do is add to cart and check out. Next slide, please. And then followed by customer service. So again, this is beyond the product. So one of the things that, like, maybe we can factor in is establishing dependency. So customer service is everything. We know this for a fact. Now, it really doesn't matter how great your product is, but then at the end of the day, if this is something that you cannot deliver within a service standard in terms of quality and adding value to experience, people get turned off. The expectation now is so much higher, given that everything is so accessible online. People are demanding so high on customer experience. Like, they feel that everything can be accessed through a touch of a button. So again, even if we say, like, okay, this is what we can do, this is whatever, this is what we can deliver, this is something that we cannot, like, neglect. Like, something that we may want to think about is how do we really build that customer dependency through customer service. So whether it's, like, pre-purchase or after purchase, is really being there for them, which is basically part of how you're going to be able to build brand trust and brand love that we talked about earlier. Next slide, please. And then another factor that, like, we have basically anchored on, especially in ArteFino, is really the driving force of your website is content. So we may not have a website now. Like, the current website we have is for fundraising purposes, and we know that we're going to be launching a new site with a new direction, but we know for a fact that that content is everything. Anything that we put out there delivers a message. So for every brand out there, like we really have to think of the content that we build and the content that we put out there. And I guess like this is again in the next part of this talk, we can talk about like how we're going to be able to deliver that using the available materials or resources that we have. Next slide, please. So we're still talking about the website experience here. Basically, when it comes to websites, like merchandising and product presentation is key. So we have to be able to, I think personally, like when you present your product catalog, you need to have a full image and you need to have like detailed shots of it for people to be able to appreciate your product. So you have individual product photos, like maybe if you have the time and the resource, you can talk about the front, the back, the side. You can really dive into like really the details, no? But when it comes to product presentation, one of the things that we've observed when it comes to website is really coming up with presentation that is true to your product. Like you really eliminate all the noise, leave out all the unnecessary stuff, and just really focus on your product. Because again, your social media is there to market your product and your website is there to sell your product. So by the time they get to the website, you want them to add cart. So what are they gonna look for? It's really more of like the product detail, how the product looks, and how they can imagine it in their spaces. Next slide, please. But more importantly, like one of the things that like we want to be able to share also is how you're gonna be able to style it. So let's say, for example, for ArteFino, we represent a particular brand. So editorial is so important to us because this is how we represent our brand. So the product photos are basically representing what the product is all about and the brands also behind it. But the editorial photos actually talk about what your brand is all about, how you actually style the products and how you actually put them in perspective is how you want others to perceive you. So this can be different for people here, no? So this is so important. Like I believe that this is so important for us because more than just a product, like people need to imagine how you're going to be able to represent and how you're going to be able to use your brand. So these are just some examples that you may want to talk about when it comes to communication. Function is so important, purpose and use of the product, and then how you're going to apply it in your daily lives is so important. Lifestyle is so important, and story, how it's made. So you see there in one of the images where there's the person holding that product, how it's made, and maybe Meet the Makers is something that you can actually touch into. Next slide, please. And then, okay, so this is just one of the examples on, let's say if you want to try to build the website, no? So again, going back to the function of the website, like when they go to the website, you want them to add to cart. So what are they looking for? It's angles of the product. So this is just an example of creating that discipline. So one of the things that you don't want in your website is to add too much distraction. So we think that it's very, very important to define a discipline when it comes to product presentation. So for example, they go to shop and then they go to the website and then they go to, let's say, for example, shoes. So you see in the slide here, it's talking about shoes, no? So when they go to shoes, everything that you present is actually, okay, one angle. And then you show another angle and you show another one. So everything follows a particular discipline because you're telling them you believe in the product already. All you need to know is the details for you to really add this to your cart. So we want to make this clean and very, very consistent because overall objective is very, very clear to us. When they go to the website, all they want them to do is shop. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm not gonna dive deep into like this example, but like this is one of the things that like we've worked on before. In terms of organization, like this is a multi-brand website, so you have organization is key, call to action is key. So all of these things that you want to talk about in your website has to be present. Next slide, please. And then in terms of product presentation, you want to be able to zero in on the brand. So you want to lessen all the clutter around it like by lessening all of these styling styling in general, like you want to zero in on the product so that when they look at the product, all you want them to see is what they want to buy. Next slide, please. Okay, so social media content strategy, this is not much slides, but then this is how we reinforce the message. Basically, what we want to highlight is really more of like identifying the discipline. Next slide, please. So these are just some examples of how we wish to be able to really put together a message. So for those people out there who are worried about really developing content, you just have to go back to this simple principle. It's about quality. It's not about quantity. It's how you deliver the message. And again, there's so many ways to utilize this. Let's say, for example, you don't have the content to post every day. One of the things that you can do to utilize the content is to actually anchor on ads. Maybe you can spend on ads instead of spending for like a marketing person to post every day, but you can actually put your money in the ads that you will develop to reach a particular audience using the same material. So again, go back to quality versus quantity, and reach is so important. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to state examples on basically where you want to start. I know this is a little bit overwhelming, but this is a simple principle. Don't worry, we will send this to you via email. Okay, so this is where we start. So one is we establish very, very clear goals and choose a platform to focus on. So for a brand to know who they speak to, again, we talk about the audience. Who are you talking to? What platform do you choose? Is this Facebook? Is this Instagram? Because all of these things have different dynamics. You just basically choose, and then from there, you work around it. Number two, develop a formula and create engaging content, whether it's photos and videos. I don't have time to really talk about photos and videos here, but really, photos and videos is what really drives content. And then you attach it to proper copy, and that's everything that you will basically need, no? But bottom line is, in terms of principle, we really have to establish consistent and patterns and think of how to humanize your brand. So again, in terms of insight, I talked about this earlier. Everyone is trying to come up with really, really creative campaigns, coming up with something new, coming up with something different. But really, the time now is to anchor on a very, very consistent message. The key, I think, again, I'm talking about personal experience. The most important thing for me is how do you build that stickiness factor? For them to remember your brand, what is it? You don't have to think of so many new things. You have to think about how this is going to stick in your brain. Like, how are you going to change the game by establishing one particular message and really putting that into the minds of the people that you are actually talking to? Okay? And then after that, so you have this key message in mind, and then you come up with a calendar. With that calendar, you divide. For example, Monday, I want to talk about a universal campaign, like Healthy Mondays. I put it there. You support that so that everybody kind of anchors on that message. Tuesday, there's something else. Wednesday, there's something else. So you're establishing a routine that people stick with, and then they go back to you. And they're like, that's how they do things. Instead of, okay, that's new, that's creative. Everyone's creative. How can we compete with that? I think consistency really, really is the key. And then last principle is about collaboration. Collaboration is really about, again, going back to interdependency. That aspect of really working with other people, it really brings the brand to more than just your promise, more than just your brand. And it's really talking about, okay, this is more than us. We're not just about ourselves. Like, we talk about other people. We support other people. This is not just about selling a product. So again, if we want to really establish that brand trust, like, it cannot just be all about us. So just to summarize, like, if we're gonna start like a campaign, or we're gonna come up with like a social media platform communications plan, this may be something that can be helpful to you. Establish clear goals, develop a formula, build a calendar, and collaborate. Next slide, please. Okay, just some examples. I'll just breeze through this. One of the clients that like we have worked with is really, basically this is the principle, no? So you use key themes to develop a formula. So if your messaging is about sustainability, you think about for the planet, for you, and for others. So if you're anchoring it on this message, everything that you will have to do will have to talk about this. So in the next slides that I am going to show you, this is really how basically you're going to break down your message. Next slide, please. Here, you can talk about your product. So when you talk about social media, obviously you need to talk about your product. You can have a catalog image on the left. So this is really product focused without any frou-frou. And then your editorial, which is more stylized photo. And then you add the human touch to it. So again, this is just sample formulas that you can actually adapt to be able to deliver that message. No? Next slide, please. Lifestyle focus is really more of like, how do you use the product? How do you integrate that in your daily life? And how can it add value to you? So this is on the results factor. Like, how does it actually make you feel? Something that you want to put out there. Next slide, please. And then lifestyle focus, you can talk about routine, you can talk about rest, you can talk about brand feeling. So again, really, this depends on how you wish to describe your brand in terms of principle, in terms of practice, in terms of everything. Again, it goes back to Prism. What kind of culture do you wish to create, and what kind of output do you wish to deliver? Then you're gonna be able to develop that brand message that you wish to anchor on. Next slide, please. And then here, in terms of community focus, this is something that I guess we can all relate with. Maybe we can talk about like how to meet the maker, the process, and the source of ingredients for them to really appreciate where your products are coming from. Next slide, please. I'm not gonna go into detail on this, but like one of the most important things that like we really have to anchor on is how to go beyond the product. Like, we've always done this in ArteFino, like artisans at work, how to meet the maker, shared mission, and social enterprise and sustainability. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the examples that like we've done in the past. Like we anchor on like the brand story and our promise and our community story, which you can apply like in your communications campaign. But again, how do you develop the formula and what your schedule is really super duper important. It cannot just be like about purpose and cannot just be about your promise, but obviously like you really need to still talk about your product and how this can actually add value to your daily lives, right? Next slide, please. And then again, this is just an example of how to zero in your product, which I guess most brands here can relate with. Like you can talk about like the process, you can talk about the craftsmanship, and you can talk about detail. One of the things that the reason why like we're pointing this out is because like one of the observations that we've noticed in the past is that like people have, I guess like those who have participated in ArteFino have always looked to ArteFino as like the platform for communicating their stories, no? But like we really believe that it's a collaborative effort. Like we cannot just talk about the product and how this is made. I think that every brand, if you really believe this is your value and this is your principle and this is how you do things, there's no shame in talking about this. And for you to really fulfill your brand message, it's nice to talk about like all of these little details because it's really something to be proud of. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we talk about a brand that is forever. So this is one of the principles that we really believe in. If people believe they share values with a company, they will stay loyal to the brand. So we know Starbucks, obviously, this is something that's community-centered. People are loyal to the brand. So it's about how they can add value to the lives of people every day that can really develop that brand trust and brand love. Next slide, please. Okay, other things to consider. So be strong and clear and simple. Include a straightforward call to action. So if you're coming up with digital copy, like one of the things that like may be helpful to you is really put there how to access your brand. So again, we're working on things that we can do now, no? And this is something that we think that is so easy to do and free. You have your Instagram, you have your Facebook, but most people fail to do this. Like, how do you access your brand? Put a call to action, say, order now, or email us now, or reach out to us for them to be able to actually push that a little further and say, okay, I want your product, I want to buy it now. And then another insight that we have noticed is that people are more sensitive now more than ever. So we have to be very, very careful with our promises and claims. So one of the things that was sensitive to us is, for example, there's so many brands out there who claim to be like quote unquote sustainable, quote unquote, parang eco, whatever. So, you know, it's just really choosing the right words, maybe just really being conscious about these things because so many people react to it. But in terms of how we react to it as a brand, if we make, let's say, for example, we make a mistake on posting something, we have to come from a place of patience and understanding. Maybe we can come from a more proactive than reactive place. Like, it's really about, you know, not giving into the customer, but really about how you actually craft your message and how you choose your words in terms of delivering that. We don't have to say, okay, you're right. Not that. I think it's really super important that we have to be able to be proactive. Next slide, please. Social media application, platforms, communication, and connection. Next slide, please. So just these are just examples, no? So of some like social media that like we have looked into the past, like in terms of putting things together. Beautiful, clean imagery is so important. It doesn't have to be all product posts. The goal is to tell the story and to identify the values through the visuals. Next slide, please. And then content insights should be clean and consistent, should follow a theme. We like it that it's clean and it follows a principle. Next slide, please. And then we can even explore illustrations and text, simple layout to create message. And then again, one of the things that like may relate to us is not to promote something that looks like an ad. How do we do that? Is something that's very, very tricky. Next slide, please. And then in order to boost your messaging, so you can explore digital ads, newsletters, and videos, which is very, very popular now. Like newsletters are free. You can get subscribed to MailChimp. Digital ads is something that can definitely elevate your brand because it can promote like most platforms like Facebook and social media. You can even like set a budget to it. That can explore like a different, like a target market that you have in mind. Can elevate, definitely something that like we really recommend, because even if you create like really, really solid content, if there's no audience that can relate to it, then obviously this is something that does not connect. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we're gonna transition into real talk. Basically, we have invited Zara Wan and Janice to talk about their experience. So we're going to transition. We're going to turn this over to them to talk about their experience when it comes to like brand building. Mel?
Thank you, Is. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Is, for that insightful talk. I like what you said, how branding is everything, and that you have to build trust, interest, trust, and love, right? Much like in any relationship that we have in our lives. Okay, so next up, just to share some insights with us on why branding is important. someone whose branding and community stories comes across very clearly when it comes to communicating the essence of her brand. ArteFino welcomes Zara One.
Yay! Thank you, Mel. I'm glad that hi everyone.
Hi, Zara.
I appreciate naman that you said that our brand is coming out clear. It's really a journey for us when it comes to branding. Should I talk na ba about the brand?
Yes. Tita
Okay.
Marites, I have to say though that Zara, that Tita Marites always mentions your Instagram posts because she loves how it's moving, and also she always mentions that and she loves it. Go ahead.
Thank you.
It's very effective. Very
Thank
effective.
you, Tita. Salamat. And that's the importance of branding, because I will mention now that part of our key value is fun, or yung isa sa keywords namin is fun and joy. So we try our best talaga na pag nag-post kami sa Instagram, meron kaming mga post na alam mo yun, light lang at saka sparks joy. So nandun siya, naka-align siya sa branding. For me kasi, like anyone else, before I started my journey, nahirapan din ako how am I gonna put things together when it comes to how I will, in creating my brand. Sa lahat ng sinabi ni Isa kanina, this is my own interpretation with my journey. For me, branding is like having a child. Sa start pa lang ng conceiving a child, kunyari, you're a mom and you got pregnant, and before giving birth, you are given 9 months before you give birth, before you see your child. And that 9 months actually give you time to prepare and really think about how you will raise your child. So, ganun din yung nangyari sa akin. It's like saying when you are waiting for your child to come, you think of the things that you will do when you meet your child. Like, for example, what values are you gonna instill in your child? The religion, pwedeng ano ba, like if you talk to your spouse, ano bang religion na ibibigay natin sa anak natin, education, ano ba yung mga important values and life principles that you will teach your child, or even as a mom, iisipin mo din ano ba yung gusto mong idamit sa anak mo, anong gusto mong ipasuot, saan mo siya papaaralin, saan lugar mo siya i-raise, and all those details, naiisip mo na yan before you actually give birth. And for me, branding gave me that head start para ma-organize ko yung thoughts at saka yung what I have been doing. I understand that a lot of us here in ArteFino, marami tayong gustong gawin. Like all of us here na mga vendors and designers, we are all creative people, and sometimes it's really real that we do not know where to start, and sa dami nating alam gawin at kayang gawin, parang gumugulo siya. And for me, branding gives you a structure. So, like preparing for a child to come, you now put together itong mga brand essence na tinatawag. Like for example, syempre, umpisang-umpisa, you have to find out bakit mo ginagawa ang isang bagay. More than creating something, more than creating a bag or shoes or damit, yun ba yung ating main purpose? So, if that's it, okay lang naman din, wala naman mali. Pero kung meron pa tayong ibang deeper purpose, that should be written, that should be organized in your mind, and I always write it down para hindi ko makalimutan, and then when the time comes na malilito ka, you can go back on your notes. So branding gave me the chance to really look closely to why I do things, and to reflect on my values as a person, and what I am willing to share to others. It also gave me the opportunity to really think of what I believe in, my principles, my advocacies, and philosophy. So parang na-organize mo siya lahat so that when we do create something, or when we speak in our social media, hindi siya nag-haywire or hindi siya sumasabog, because klaro lang kung ano yung gusto natin sabihin. Marami din tayong skills, marami din tayong talents as a designer and a vendor. Ibig sabihin, ano lang ba talaga yung gagawin mo at saan ka lang magpo-focus. Kung walang branding, we might be able to do other things that is not aligned with our branding, and thus wasting our time and money and effort na hindi naman pala kasama doon sa what we are trying to say as a brand. Yung mga good example niya, like mga para lang for easy understanding, or parang mga day-to-day activities namin sa brand, like what Tita Marites said, na natutuwa siya sa Instagram account namin. Meron kaming mga keywords na sinulat as a team. And yung mga keywords na yon are very, anything under the sun. We had our brainstorming sa team namin, and we asked each and everyone kung ano yung mga keywords na naiisip nila when they think of our brand. So for example, we asked our team, if when you think about the 01 brand, do you think it's a sunrise or sunset? Ano ba yung brand natin? Umaga ba or gabi, or sunrise ba or sunset? And 100% of us said, ay, sunrise tayo, because gusto natin palaging may hope, bagong umaga, at saka palaging new day, no? It's always a fresh start. And so therefore, anong relevance ng sagot ng mga team members namin sa simple question na yon? It actually translates to our brand voice. Meaning to say, when we put or create an item and put a name to it, puro siya on the line of being hopeful. That's why we have the Pag-asa mask, no? Or during our campaign, we have the Biyaheng Pag-asa. That's actually naka-align pa rin sa brand namin, because we want to spark hope and joy as a brand. Na-mention din na we are a sunrise. One of our keywords is sunrise. So therefore, kung mapapansin po ninyo sa aming Instagram, hindi po kami nagpo-post kahit kailan ng picture na kinuha ng gabi. Umaga lang siya palagi, or palagi lang maliwanag. Because we want that, we want to evoke that emotion that, there's always hope, there's always a new day that we can have a fresh start. So that's a very simple example that I can share with you, that when you start knowing your brand, it becomes clearer, and yung translation niya is actually ma-execute natin sa day-to-day communications natin. Most especially right now, during the time of crisis. Kasi nga, wala tayong brick and mortar ngayon. Some of us meron, but most of us really rely on our social media account. So therefore, dapat mas klaro yung ating communications. Sa aming brand din, we follow, we have our own brand color. Yung brand namin, we have pink, blush pink, and red. And those two colors, it just so happened when we launched our brand, sobrang nauuso yung millennial pink or blush pink. But in reality, when we try to dissect what our brand stands for, yung red na color kasi, originally, we just chose the red color for our brand. Why? Because every communities na na-visit ko, ang common color is red. Lahat ng ating, I must say, mga indigenous communities, merong red. At saka yung even mga women cooperatives or organization, paraging may red, napansin ko lang. And so therefore, I captured that color and I said, this is the strength of our women in different organizations sa buong Pilipinas na naikot ko. So it actually, it's a strong color. It depicts the strength of a woman, of a Filipino woman. And I also want to capture also the soft side or the feminine side of a Filipino woman, that's why lumabas yung pink. And so therefore, we decided that we want to combine pink and red to really show the strength of a woman.
Just what's in your packaging, right? The pink and red.
Yes, that's what you will see in our paper bag. Lahat ng mga packaging namin are all pink and red. Our ribbons are red. So nag-translate siya lahat by just knowing and really dissecting what matters to the brand. So slowly nag-translate na siya sa iba't ibang interpretation and usage. Even our mga etiketa or labels, lahat na pink and red. So there's also brand recognition or recall na sinasabi. So natatandaan ng tao pagka during ArteFino, pagka may dumaan na paper bag na pink and red, alam na namin as a team na may bumili sa amin.
Yeah.
By the way, dapat ngayon ArteFino Day natin ngayon, second day.
Today was supposed to be the fourth ArteFino installment. Yeah.
You know, I was gonna text you guys sa anong oras ang Ingres para lang ito. But na-miss ko lang bigla. Also, in our logo, you would see this knot, which is a binding knot or a Hercules knot. It's one of the strongest binding knot. And we created that logo to also capture one of our beliefs or guiding principle, which is we believe in the power of collaboration. So I noticed also that sa line of work ko, before I had created this brand, I've been mentoring several communities sa iba't ibang parts of the country. And I also realized that each and every one of us, we have our own strength. So meaning to say, I have my own strength. I can design, I can do product development. In communities, meron din silang sarili nilang strength. Bago pa dumating kahit sinong designer or product developer sa isang community, meron na silang taglay na lakas nila on their own. So therefore, this two strength and power can be more powerful and more impactful when there is collaboration, because we have to accept the fact that we do not know everything and we also need others in order to be more productive. So to signify and symbolize that relationship with the communities, we chose the binding knot.
I didn't know that, Zara. Thank you. I didn't know that that's what it symbolized. How interesting.
Yes, ayun. Yun ang meaning nun. So everything has a meaning. So meaning to say, sa branding, hindi lang tayo basta maglalagay ng symbol just because it looks good. It's nice to pick and choose those details of our own DNA because each brand is unique and different. Walang mali. I mean,
Yeah.
iba-iba tayo, parang tao, di ba? Like, that's why I compared it to having a child because iba't
When you
ibang.
compared it to having a child, I compared it to marriage.
Oo, tama din.
Anyway, Isa, maybe you could build on that. And
Yeah.
but
We keep
thank you,
talking about
Zara. That's so
character.
insightful.
Thanks, Zara.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
I
allowing
wish
me
we
Yeah.
had more time.
Yes, I know. Next time.
Okay.
So can we we're gonna turn this over to Janice, Chua of Island Girl. So I guess the reason why we invited Zara and Janice is because the exercises that we talked about earlier is something that they've both experienced. And they're here to share their insights, especially like with Janice, who experienced the rebranding in the time of COVID. We had worked together on rebranding Island Girl prior to the pandemic, and we were worried about launching the brand because everybody's on lockdown. Um, and she's here to talk about the challenges of everything that happened now and how basically you'll do everything DIY. So Janice.
Hi everyone. I'm Janice from Island Girl. Hi Mel. um, yes. So as what Isa said, I reached out to her sometime I think third quarter or the last quarter of I think the last quarter of 2019 because I was talking to actually Zara, and she said I was telling her about my problem, our problem of, we're initially we're manufacturers, and we really have that mindset to be a manufacturer. So our brand is before yes. So sorry, I forgot to say next. I'm new to this. So excuse me, forgive me for any mistakes I might have throughout this presentation. Um, we were getting out of the challenge for us has been getting out of that manufacturer's mindset because it's we've been manufacturing for more than 30 years for other brands abroad and some here as well. So it's always about what do our clients want. We make as what the client wants, but when it comes to branding, it's a bit of a challenge when you have so many you work with so many skills, and you have a lot of materials, natural materials that are available, and you have all of that. You can work with so much. So it was really a matter of filtering everything. That was the problem for us. So Zara suggested that why not talk to Isa about branding. So that was the second part of what we did. The second challenge was really extracting the brand's essence, the brand's DNA. And we really worked with Isa on a lot of branding exercises. At first, I was so overwhelmed because there were so many exercises that we had to do. But I think it really helped paint a better picture of who we are as a brand. So it's not anymore like everything that you're capable of doing you can do, because the brand is everything is rooted in the brand, and everything you make and how you communicate, how you present yourself digitally through those online platforms has to reflect that brand essence. So that was the second challenge for us. And then communicating that brand essence digitally was also a challenge. So I'm sharing two pictures here. The first one on your left, which is very Christmassy, was actually a shoot that we did for Presente, last year's Presente in December. So I guess everybody here who was part of Presente knows that we were sent pegs for the photography, which a lot of us had to do also. So we did it ourselves. And there's to me this at first I said, oh, okay, we're following the pegs and there's nothing wrong with this. But then after all those brand exercises with Isa, we really got to the root of what the brand is, and it's that we're rooted in natural. That's our battle cry. We always say we work with natural materials. Everything we do, all the products that we come up with, there's always something natural. We always highlight natural materials that are abundant in the country, combined with the skills of our weavers and of our artisans. So that's really what the brand is about. So when we posted this picture, when we did this shoot, I thought there was nothing wrong with it. But then Isa said, that's actually not right for your brand, because even down to the little details, you have to think about the props you're going to use. So she was saying, why are you using things that are like made in China or plastic, when in fact your brand is all natural? So it really got me to thinking. It was so eye-opening for me, and like even those small details for a flat lay, for a single post, those things matter. So taking that into consideration, the next time we did our flat lays and shoots, we followed her advice and used only natural elements. A lot of these elements, actually, in the second photo on your right, are things that are found in our warehouse. So we have so many components, all natural, all handmade. So we use that to style our products. So, okay, next slide, please. Oh, so the next,
And
yes.
modeling. You've been modeling.
Oh my God, my first modeling stint because of COVID. I'll get to that later. So yeah, big challenge for everyone has been, hurdling this pandemic. Especially for us also, when after our branding exercises last year, we really decided na the next step would be to rebrand. But then, so we're doing everything as scheduled, and then the pandemic happens. So I was even talking to Isa, like, should we do it now? Should we wait until this is over, until the lockdown is over, or what? And we decided that we should just do it. Launch the brand quietly, just change the look of the website, update our social media, and then when we launched the brand online with a new website, we also came out with this post to be sensitive about the entire situation, because we really launched in April, which is really like when the lockdown pretty much started. So we launched this promotion, Nation First, Yield Later. 50% of all of our sales off the site would be donated to Courage Cebu, which is like a local initiative here in Cebu at that time. The PPEs and all the medical equipment, the supplies were very hard to come by and in demand. So we partnered with Courage Cebu for this effort. So we donated half of our sales for I think 2 months to Courage Cebu. So that's how
Janice, if I could just chime in, what would you say is the biggest challenge launching a brand, launching your new look for the brand in the time of this pandemic?
Well, shooting all the photos, the lack of skills, like the next bullet point there is lack of skills in creating quality content.
So
because
before their photography skills coming up in a few minutes.
I had pretty much none, but I hope I'm getting better now, because we were just about to shoot the summer campaign and the lockdown happened. So we couldn't shoot at all. We had no photographer, no model, nothing. So what do you do when you just rebranded? You need to come up with new products, or at least present your products differently for your rebrand, right? So I had to do a lot of things on my own, from shooting the products myself, which
it is,
from shooting the products myself to actually being the model myself.
I know.
No choice. I stuck to the basic principles. Like, to me, the most important thing was really that brand essence and knowing how
Right.
to deliver that in every photo. So this is our
Looks
new look.
good.
This is
Good.
what the website now looks like, the updated website. Um, I think it's more diverse, it's more alive now, and it communicates better what we're all about. So
Very
next.
nice. Very nice.
So the key insights for me has been really extracting the brand's DNA, that essence. It's the most important thing. It's your foundation. It's what you go back to every day with everything you do. And next is keeping in touch with our communities and customers. You have to, find out not only what your communities, the artisan communities are doing that you're partnered with, but also what's going on in your local community. So that's why we did that collaboration, that partnership with Courage Cebu, because that was necessary in the local community. That was a need for the local community. And then, what do your customers want? It's like putting together all of those things. What's going on in the community, what's going on in the local, in Cebu, and then what do your customers need. So tying all of that together has been important. And of course, keeping content fresh by shooting frequently. This is something that I've been doing throughout the lockdown. I've been
Me
practicing
too.
photography skills because you really have to, even if you're not able to come up with new products all the time, if you could just offer like a new way of styling or a new way of presenting the same product, then it adds freshness to your feed, I guess, if you're posting on social media. So that's been quite important. And also, I learned that everything else you can learn online. Zara, I think, was the one who told me this. Zara, she told me about the tutorials that she would watch on YouTube, and then I'm following her actually. There are so many things that you can learn online on YouTube through tutorials and online master classes. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, that
You know, I wish we had more time to talk
I know.
about, but I must say, the new site, the new branding, the new logo, I miss the Gumamela. It looks good. It feels like a more mature brand. It feels like it
yeah,
kind of
she
grew
grew
up
up.
a bit. Now she's a little bit more sophisticated.
Yeah, she grew up.
That's, yeah. But thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ias? Isa? Shall we move on to the photography? Okay, to summarize.
I think Isa.
Just to, yeah, it's
Isa.
confusing. Um,
There.
yeah, so okay, just want to summarize like everything we've talked about. So I know this box we will be emailing like a certain like homework to you guys. If you want to answer it, this is something that you can apply. You can email it back to us and then we can give you feedback. But to put everything together, to summarize, it's very, very important that you know your brand is so important. You know your audience, you organize and you prioritize more than anything. You create content rooted in branding is basically everything that we've talked about in the few slides. No, next slide, please. And then in terms of action point, Patty, next slide. So in terms of action point, sorry, can you go back to the previous? So in terms of action point, what Zara said earlier, write everything down. There's no right or wrong answer, but like we really believe in the power of writing and visualizing. Like the moment you put everything in perspective, it's so easy for you to have something to anchor on, and then organize, and don't be afraid to explore and create. Because again, this is like a relationship. This is like, character building. Like there's no right or wrong answer. You experiment and then you develop. So basically, when you're creating a brand, like if you want to be true and authentic to it, you just have to do the work. Next slide, please. So just want to wrap it up with a few points that personally I believe to be true. If there is only one answer to making voice your voice heard, is basically one thing: to build an authentic brand. Now, how do you do that? Number one, next slide. Keep the message simple and significant. People need to understand what you're talking about. Number two, the best support is to walk the talk. So the moment you understand yourself, it's so easy for you to put everything in perspective. So we've talked about this earlier. Brands with soul and meaning are the ones that last. So if you're not true to your brand, then basically this is just, everything is just shallow. So I think in the ArteFino community, we all have an edge, no? Because basically we're also honest about like everything that we're doing and the brands that we actually put in perspective and what we present. Everything is coming from an honest space. Next slide, please. And then number three, it's all about relationships. People value relationships with their brand, foundations on loyalty, care, extensions beyond the product. Well, we cannot fake relationships, no? So parang we talked about culture and we talked about relationships. This cannot be faked. Everything revolves around this. Like, it's not just about like a good product, but how you relate with your customer is very, very important. Number four, your value is in the hard work you put into it. Nobody can replicate passion, kindness, character, service, and human-centered core values. So if this is something that you're anchored on, then basically you're on the right track. Number five, lastly, things take time. We have to understand this, and we have to be very, very patient. Like, a lot of us are so, because of this pandemic, we're like, okay, let's do this now, let's shift now, let's think of something creatively. But then we have to root back on continuity and consistency in everything that we do, because this is basically the key to everything. It's an investment of energy. It's the relationship that you build, and we have to always remember that love and trust, they basically take time. So in the principles that we talked about earlier, in terms of interest, awareness, brand love, and brand trust, these things take time. So, as for my final words, the most effective way to communicate is to stay true to who you are. So, anything that we basically do, anything that we basically put out there is basically something that's anchored onto our values, our principles, our core being. And the moment that we realize that, it's so easy for us to be authentic. Thank you.
Okay.
I talked so much.
No, that was super good.
Okay.
Thank you. Now,